Welcome to the Fifth Gate Podcast. We have thrown around the idea of a podcast for years, but we finally made it happen as we were stuck together on a 10-hour road trip home from a horse show. Our passion is the Icelandic horse and all aspects of the worldwide community that surrounds this breed. Here, we come together as equestrian professionals to share our hardest lessons, our biggest wins, and our future hopes for Icelandic horsemanship. Our conversations aim to educate, inspire, and grow all people like us who love Icelandic horses, from enthusiasts and amateurs to trainers, competitors, and field specialists. In today's episode, Carrie and I recap all of our observations from the World Championships. We share some controversial ones, some probably shared observations as well, our favorite horse and rider combinations, and present some very interesting data points that we actually calculated ourselves. So tune into this very interesting episode. We hope that it creates discussion amongst our viewers and, as always, inspires better horsemanship for the future and more ambitious sport goals. All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Fifth Gate Podcast. We are very excited to come to you all in this episode because this is a special time for our sport, the Icelandic horse discipline, because we are just coming off of the World Championships, which is an event that only happens every 2 years. It is just such an incredible representation of how global our sport is, and to see all of these competitors coming from all over Europe competing at the highest level on some of the nicest horses is truly inspiring. And we got to watch it here in the US, some live, most of it not live because of the time difference. Some of it was 3 a.m., which we weren't quite willing to get up that early.
We're dedicated, maybe not that dedicated.
Yeah. Either way, though, did we watch? I think we watched everything. Yeah. So, with that said, we have some observations that came up in discussion as we were watching them. And some of them, I don't want to say they're controversial, but I want to encourage you all to open a discussion with us if you have any feedback to give or any points to offer, because one of the things I was thinking about, we are uniquely a little isolated, I would say, from the worldwide aspect of the sport. We have a unique perspective in that we have very little bias to some degree while we're watching it, but we also are excluded from conversations that may be happening that maybe offer more insight that we don't have. So anyways, as we go over these observations, we would love for you guys to share what you thought too, if you disagree with us or if you agreed with us.
Well, and I'll add that we did actually have the pleasure of both being a part of Team USA as grooms.
Yes.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, we were in the Netherlands.
Yes.
And if you saw two blonde girls trying to ride a bike whose seat was way too tall and was quite wobbly, decorated in American flags and pink
a
feather
pink boa, and then one sat on the back on the basket, and my butt is permanently bruised.
That was us. That was us. We were there, and I do have to say, I missed being there.
Yeah, me too.
And being a part of the World Championship atmosphere. I think one of the most precious and valuable parts of these events is actually the conversations that happen between everyone surrounding the event and at the event. So I had to deal with some envious emotions watching everybody there, and would love to be with them again in the future, maybe in 2 years.
Yeah, maybe.
So different experience watching the live stream. We have some observations, so I'm going to start. My first one is I'm definitely a fan of Team Iceland. Team Iceland was amazing. I was influenced in that because our colleague and friend Kaylee Kavanaugh, although she was competing for the United States, her horse came from Iceland, so she ended up having her horse travel with the Icelandic team and be in their tent because those horses are quarantined away from the rest of the horses. Just talking to her, it was amazing to hear how supportive Team Iceland was of each other and of her in this venture of the World Championships. And she said it was really amazing to see them working together as a team. That's something I observed 2 years ago as well. But I think that the results show that Team Iceland was even more successful as a team this year. 2 years ago, Denmark won.
Yes.
And this year, Iceland was the winner of the team competition.
Mm-hmm.
I also loved how fun it looked like their horses were to ride.
I agree.
That was a really great thing to observe and also hear about from our friends and connect to what we had seen 2 years ago. 2 years ago, another interesting note, they had chosen not to send any T2 riders, which was not the case this year. They had T2 riders. So they had a more diverse and strong team, as well as a team that seemed to really work together well.
And it worked for them because they won the team competition
this year. So yeah, do you have any comments on that?
Actually, one of my observations, which I'll get into, Team Iceland was also just who I overall enjoyed watching their horsemanship the most, and going back to how they looked like they were having the most fun and the horses looked the most fun to ride. I just loved the free forward thinking that you could see in every one of their performances, that the horses just looked like they were truly carrying themselves. My biggest observation, though, or maybe the most controversial observation I have, which I'll start with, it was a specific instance that happened in the F1 finals. It was when Pierre and Goldstein lost a shoe. The interesting part of this, which I don't know that we've ever seen happen here in the US, just because we also don't have that many competitions, and much less do we have people riding in F1, is he didn't lose the shoe until after the third pace sprint.
It was the second.
Oh, I thought it was the third.
It was the second pace sprint. After the second, it was the very end
of
the second pace sprint.
Okay.
So he missed his third, I think.
Okay. Because he completed all the other sections, because in F1, pace comes at the very end of the class. So in the finals, he had completed all other sections. So he did get scores for all other sections. But in the sport guidelines, the sport judges guidelines, I think that's where this rule comes from, it says if the loss of a shoe occurs in the finals or in a pace track test, any marks and or times earned before the loss of a shoe are kept, including those from completed sections or runs. The rider receives a 0 for the remaining sections. So the interesting part of this is that he at least completed 1 pace sprint.
2.
But you could argue he completed 2 if you didn't include the loss of the shoe as part of the second pace sprint. But because he could not finish the third pace sprint, he received a 0. And he was a top contender in the F1 finals. I'm not exactly sure where he would have placed, of course, because we didn't see the scores that he got for those sprints that he completed, because he just automatically received a 0. I do see where, when you look at this rule, to be fair to other competitors that lose shoes in other sections that are just for obvious reasons structured differently, that would be why you would adhere to giving him a 0. But I do think this is a special circumstance where maybe it should be considered that this rule be rethought.
For the pace.
For the pace specifically. Yeah, like making
for the pace in 5-gate. I think the challenging
in 5-gate finals.
Yeah.
Specifically.
In 5-gate finals, because there are 3 sprints and the score is the average of the 2 best sprints. So you can miss one of those sprints. And he did complete the first
That's
2.
what I didn't touch on yet.
Right? So he completed the first 2. The shoe was lost at the end of the second one. So theoretically, there was enough of a performance to give it a complete score.
Right.
As in he wasn't missing 2 sprints. He had the 2 sprints he needed to receive a
complete score, but he also still could have received a half a score for the first sprint if they decided that the shoe being lost was included in the second sprint. So
it's just kind of a little bit where you draw the line. When is the performance of the pace complete? Is it complete after 2 sprints that are full sprints and show up as full sprints, right? Or not? And per this rule, in our rule book, that section of the test has to be just taken out, zeroed. However, it is a little strange that he kind of could have gotten an average of the 2.
Yeah, he could have. But I do see where, like I said, to be fair, they adhered to this rule in giving him a 0. But I wonder if this is an actual exception or should be an exception to the rule, is F1 finals.
So it is a weird one.
interesting.
It was an awkward one.
It
There were
wasn't
many
awkward.
times while we were watching where we were like scrolling through the judges matrix or referencing the rule book and going, okay, exactly how does this work? And that was one that did feel strange, at least watching in the live stream the way we did.
And just so unfortunate too, because that was one of our favorite horse and rider combinations. So we were really excited to see how they would do, but you know, it happens.
Major bummer.
Yeah.
I do think it's super important to mention that we are proud of Team USA.
Oh, yes,
We need
absolutely.
we need to be proud of our country. The United States has to overcome a lot to even send a team to the World Championships. It's very costly to fly the horses.
It's also exhausting. I mean, what a journey for the horses and riders.
It's a whole thing here in a way that it's just not as challenging if you're coming from Europe. Now, some of our riders do come from Europe. They're based in Europe and then go to the World Championships, and that's obviously a much more cost-effective journey. But those riders are also not with their horses competing here at the shows in the US with us as much. And there's definitely a value to riders coming from here and then also bringing back that information and knowledge and horses.
A value to our community.
To our community, to them coming back here. We placed 11th overall in the team competition, which is actually the same ranking we held 2 years ago. So we had a very comparable overall, I think, team performance. We had some exciting changes. Ulul Ambla was our team trainer, and I know that was really special to us. Many of us, too, on the national team here at home really benefited from her coaching and mentorship. So that's been a moment of growth for our country, having a real team trainer to help us prepare and also just help our competitive rider community grow. We did have stronger scores in T1 and V1 than we have had in previous years as a whole. I think the average score of the rider went up in those classes.
Very cool.
We had a less balanced team. We didn't have anybody representing us in 5-gate or the pace races.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day, exactly. I hope that in the future, the U.S. can strengthen the diversity of their team. We had no youth riders. We had a couple youth riders that were trying out and trying to make it and didn't make certain benchmarks needed to make the World Championship team. They're on our national team, but not the World Championship team. I would love to see more youth representation from the United States. I would also love to see more representation in the pace disciplines. They're close to my heart, so I would love to see some representation there. And also in 5-gate and more representation in T2. We had kind of an overwhelming majority of the riders in T1 and V1 with horses that were strong in either one or both of those categories. Those are some hopes for the future.
Yes.
We'll see how that goes in the next 2 years, building that up here.
It actually creates more interest around the sport when we have people who are from the US actually go to the World Championship. So I would love to see that our team gets bigger and that it gets bigger in the sense of we get more stateside riders filling up the team.
I think here in the US, the biggest struggle is to build competition up from the ground. We had a lot of conversations watching the World Championships about how we want to see stronger competitions here so that the riders here can get more experience and build more momentum behind their competitive skills.
Yeah, competitive skills and their competitive career.
Before heading on to the World Championships. And I think we'll always be limited if we have to go to Europe or go to Iceland to gain that experience. It's an interesting combination of things where going to World Championships really helps inspire that here, but we also need to just build the foundation here so that we can send more riders to World Championships.
Moving on to my second observation, this is one that was very interesting to us just because it's not something that we see here or have seen yet. Maybe it's common in other disciplines, but it's the rising popularity of the shorter shank. We were trying to wrap our heads around was just understanding the mechanics or the physics of it and why it would be more beneficial or more desirable than the longer shank. And I went into this whole rabbit hole of searching YouTube videos on the basics of physics and how leverage work around a fulcrum. From what I understood, I'm not a bit expert. From what I understood was that the shorter shank, I guess the rotation happens quicker when the shank is shorter because the leverage is shorter. So
it's a quicker time.
It's a quicker time, and also it requires less rotation of the shank for more rotation to happen in the mouth. I was just trying to understand why you would want that, or why someone would say that was less severe. Because the other thing I was finding in my research was that a lot of different bit companies were actually marketing the shorter shank as being less severe, but they didn't really go into the mechanics of how it was less severe. And to me, based on how I'm understanding leverage, it doesn't make sense to me that it is necessarily less severe, because in the longer shank, you actually have to take up a lot more, or it has to rotate more around the fulcrum, which would be the bit. It has to rotate more for rotation to happen.
Could it be that a longer shank does ultimately, or can ultimately, apply more force, poundage force, while it does, though, allow for a longer duration for that force to come into effect?
Yes.
While the shorter leverage bit, it's less poundage possible,
But
quicker in going from a little bit to a lot.
Yeah, my takeaway from it was more that it's a little bit more nuanced about what less severe means. The shorter shank being quicker in its rotation could actually you could argue is more severe, just because when you make that rotation with the shank, the degrees of rotation that you make with it are immediately putting more rotation in the mouth, versus the same degree of rotation that you put on the longer shank actually are rotating less in the mouth.
Yeah.
So it's nuanced.
It is, but I love that you dove into that, because my experience watching has been that I haven't found it a good look.
Yeah, it didn't to me look
I
better.
feel like a lot of the horses that were ridden in those bits were more resistant to the contact and seemed to be struggling more with the contact than the horses that were ridden in the more traditional Icelandic Stangkirs.
Yeah.
And maybe for those of you who don't know, we have very strict rules on what type of bits we're allowed to use,
Very
down
regulated.
to the measurement of the bulb where the bit rotates in for these shank bits. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the connection between the Stangkir shank and the mouthpiece is mobile, so it moves around. And that's very different from traditional Western shank bits or English shank bits, or like a pelham in more dressage type of shank leverage bits. Our joint there is mobile, which means that as the Stangkir shanks come into play, the bit works as a snaffle first, and the chain is only coming into contact with the horse's chin due to that mobile joint, is only coming into contact underneath the horse's chin when it's reaching about 45 degrees with the line of the bridle on the side of the horse's face. A lot of people are horrified when they see us ride with contact with a shank bit in our discipline, but that's because of that rotating joint. So these bits are very different from other leverage bits.
And also the regulation on the tightness of the chain.
Yes, and we have very strict regulation. All horses go through a check post-performance about how tight that chain is. It's actually a bad thing if you see the Stangkir the shank pointing down as contact comes. The shank should rotate up as contact comes. Relating that back to what you were saying, though, I wonder if that's also part of the problem with the shorter shanks, because then it's spending less time as a snaffle.
Exactly, yes.
And
that was my
enacting the curb chain sooner.
Yes.
I don't know.
Someone is welcome to correct us.
Yes, we need a bit expert to come on the podcast and help educate us on that front. But those are definitely some fun things to consider with that. I struggled the most with the judging when it came to judging the walk.
I think we all did. We were trying to.
Apologies to the sport judges out
Yes.
there, because we are going to criticize the sport judging on this one particular point. I just personally could not figure it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes looking at the scores relative to the performance, it also seemed that the judges were not in agreement either. There were times where there would be a judge that would give a very low score for walk and then all the way up to 8 for walk for the same walk performance in preliminaries. So not explained away by seeing the horse at different points in time in the final. Because of that, I started to really think about what are the qualities we're looking for when we're judging walk. And we went back to the guidelines and we practiced. I would judge and you would judge, and then we'd compare to what we were seeing in ice test. My conclusion was that the judges were seeing more beat faults and more problems in the frame when they were seeing the really hyper-extended big walk.
Yes.
In the past, I feel like really long stepping walk with like extreme stride length, even if it became a bit trotty, was rewarded. And the judges are trying to move away from just rewarding that.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like they were aiming to reward more when the horse, yes, had big strides, but the hind leg was swinging more in front of the point of hip. If you draw a line down on the horse from the point of hip, they were swinging more forward into the carrying phase of each step, as opposed to back.
Yes.
I started using that as I was judging.
As a barometer.
And really watching that and being very particular about the beat. I became a bit more in alignment or consistent in my guesses on what the judges would give. However, even with that, it wasn't always consistent. I would also be curious, we need a bit expert, and we also need an international judge that's very dedicated to walk. To help us understand that better moving forward. So something to look forward to with the podcast. We'll get some good discussions going on this
absolutely.
topic.
The next judge we have on, it's just going to be all about walk. All right, so we also, just for the fun of it, we actually had one of our students sitting with us collecting some data as we were watching one of the things that we were really celebrating, and that was, I guess, a buzz of our conversations, was the ages of the horses. We decided to look at the average age of the horses of each group. Was it in finals?
With some of them, it was in finals. We actually did the average age of all the horses in P2, which is a 100-meter pace.
Okay.
So that average was 14.5 years, with the youngest being 8 and the oldest being 23.
23? I didn't even realize. That's so cool.
It's so amazing. I think the main takeaway is that our horses compete, especially in pace, really into their later years, and they do so very successfully. A lot of our best pace horses are older. Think about how rare that is in the horse world as a whole. Here in Kentucky, we're in the thoroughbred racehorse industry. Many of those horses, their careers are done by the time they're 3 or 4 years old.
I think 4 is like maxing out.
Even a lot of rodeo sports, horses are ending their careers oftentimes way before they're even in their double digits.
Yeah, absolutely.
In our sport, I think we can be very proud of the fact that teenagers are the ones rocking it in the 100-meter pace all the way up into their 20s.
It's pretty amazing. And you could argue, too, this is the most physically demanding class of our sport, or section of our sport, the pace race.
Absolutely. And proof of concept when it comes to us prioritizing horse welfare in our discipline. If our horses were falling apart and struggling in the roles that we're putting them in, they would not be lasting into their late teens and 20s as race horses.
Absolutely. And I would say prioritizing horse welfare not only in training, but in breeding as well.
Yes, that they have the right conformation to withstand that.
We also looked at the average age of horses in A finals. And so here I've got all the A finals average ages. In T1 is 13.3 years. In T2, it's 11.3 years. In V1, it's 12.5 years, and in F1, it's 12.5 years. One thing that we thought was interesting is that the highest in those A finals is T1, and we have always talked about how that is the most physically demanding final for sure, just because of how long it is, also just the level of engagement and collection required to compete at that high level. Yeah.
I think the main thing is that for those folks that aren't familiar with what T1 is, it has a slow tempo section. It has a speed changes section
Right.
where you show a lengthening of the stride. So you're in slow tempo tolt, and then you
Two,
accelerate, and then you come back.
Yeah.
And then you also have the fast tempo. Like you said, that means that they have to have a very high level of schooling in collection and then also have a high level of schooling in the extension.
Yeah.
The fast tempo.
Yeah.
It is noteworthy that all of them are double digits.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The lowest one is loose rein tolt, T2 at 11.3.
That also makes sense from the perspective of loose rein tolt being something that a lot of horses just do very naturally.
It's an innate ability in that horses, just genetics.
A lot of the best loose rein tolt horses, they have that, and then you just shape it and put it on a button.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of skill, but it's more of a circus trick.
Yes.
As opposed to the level of collection and speed that's asked for in T1.
Yeah.
I think we cannot discuss the World Championships without mentioning Cora Wiemans.
Oh, yes.
I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
I think she's world famous at this point. I think every video of her went viral over the course of this World Championship. I mean, how could it not?
How could it not?
Yeah.
She's definitely my personal hero. She is in her 80s or is 80.
Yeah.
She's the oldest rider competing at the World Championships. She was that also 2 years ago in the Netherlands. So we got to see her live in the Netherlands and then again now in the live stream. For those of you that have been impressed with my pace here in the US on Screpa, Cora has my times beat hands down. She rides way faster than I do. I think that's really important to mention because it's such a great inspiration to us. This is not a sport where you have some sort of expiration date, where we're discriminated against based on our age or how we look. It is a sport where the person that has the most successful relationship and abilities with their horses, can be successful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's so special about horsemanship, especially in this day and age.
Yeah. In Icelandic horsemanship specifically, I don't know how it compares to other disciplines, but it's so neat to see how level the playing field feels between men and women.
Yes.
Is that there are just as many women winning finals as there are men, if not sometimes more. It very much balances out in that it varies year by year.
Horses don't discriminate.
Horses don't discriminate. Yeah, absolutely.
They do not discriminate, which is just so special. I think we should remind ourselves of that more often. We had some favorite horse rider combinations.
We had many.
We had many. We made a list while we were watching, and that list was really long. We forced ourselves to limit it to just 3 each. That's what we had to do because we can't podcast for 8 hours. We do have to keep it relatively within the constraints of what is reasonable.
Especially according to our producer. We're not allowed to go on tangents.
Part of that is he might be eaten by bugs and
get tired of listening to our voices when he goes and edits the episodes.
Absolutely, absolutely. When it comes to my favorites, the first one I want to mention is Kasper Logan and Otti fra Skeppargården. He's from Sweden. I don't know if I said his name correctly. I have Icelandic and English covered. Sorry, some German. I do not have Swedish covered. He was the winner of the 5-gate combination award. That means that he had to compete in a tolt event, the 5-gate event, and then also a pace event. The riders that receive that 5-gate combination award actually have to do well in 3 different categories of our sport.
Yeah.
That is a huge mission in regards to getting your horse fit to compete successfully in all three,
Absolutely.
especially in such a short amount of time.
Mhm.
I think riders that are successful in that really should be looked up to for that. They're horses that fit and understanding and working with them in a way that they can pivot like that between the different aspects of our discipline.
A lot of strategic discipline within their training.
So much preparation. So the thing that I like personally the most about this horse is that this horse reminded me of some of the older style five gaiters in the fact that he didn't have very good trot. The trot was pretty flat. I'm not a huge fan of riding really bouncy, bumpy trot. Just like most of my favorite horses don't have the best trot. And a part of me found it refreshing and kind of fun that he had some weaknesses and it wasn't a thing that I don't care as much about.
So clearly did not hold him back.
It did not. It was very well trained and presented trot, but it was overall weaker. And on the other hand, this horse just had incredible pace. My favorite moment of all was when he was going down the pace track and he had already received the 5-gate combination award. So he was going again for crowd appeal, I think. So he takes Oti down into pace and he starts waving to the crowd, doing this like circle with his hands.
It's a whip, I think.
Yeah, he's just like, whoa! He's
Yeah,
having a grand time, enjoying his horse. This horse is pacing beautifully. He has barely any rein contact, and he beats his previous time that gave him the title doing that. And
amazing.
That's just such a fun moment, and it exemplifies the concept of this horse is that willing to perform and that able to perform that even with Casper just having fun and enjoying it, the horse offered even more.
Yeah.
I think that's just a huge testament to that pair and what they're really capable of.
I completely agree. And if you haven't seen that moment, you need to go watch it because it's truly iconic. It should be highlighted in like ESPN sports highlights or something. It will go down in history for sure. Yeah.
It should.
So a horse and rider combination that I loved, that I think everyone loved, is Lisa in Kjalar, which I don't know. I don't have my German covered or my Icelandic covered, so
Schruger.
I will let you guys fill in the blanks, but I think you all know who that is. If you don't, the lovely white horse and the very happy, smiling rider, because they truly always look like they are enjoying themselves. I love to watch, especially Kjalar's focus. Like you can see how intensely he is with her. He was one of the older horses competing in the World Championships. I don't know exactly what age. I feel like
I think he's 18.
Yeah, it was somewhere between 17 and 19. So 18 sounds like a good middle ground. But that was really just neat to see at how beautiful, how athletically he could put together these performances and effortlessly offer these beautiful gaits in V1 and T1, which V1 is 4-gate and T1 is the tolt class we were talking about that we think is the most physically demanding. And then ultimately he ended up winning the 4-gate combination. They were just amazing to watch the whole time. And he looked so confident and self-assured too. It's like while he was willing and so focused with her, he also looked so steady. I think that's also maybe a testament to how long it takes to achieve something like this. It is not a one and done thing. This is not their first time at the World Championships. And this is certainly not their first time riding these tests.
I remember when we were in the Netherlands biking past him on our feather boa bike. One of the things that I've always loved about him is his floppy ears. Yes. He has the cutest floppy ears. It just warms my heart.
So cute.
A rider for me that I thought was really neat to watch, but not initially, was Helge Björnsdóttir and Ósk. They represented Iceland. We had conversations as we watched the live stream because this combo didn't stand out to me in the beginning. Never a bad feeling, just I feel like they somehow faded into the background. I've seen them before in competitions in Iceland. I've watched them before in other live streams. They're a very successful pair.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that I watched them, the more I was like, wow, these two are really incredible together.
Yeah, they really were. They were, that would have been my number 4.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And horses or riders stand out almost for the wrong reasons. They're particularly impressive, but they're also fighting a lot between the horse and rider combination, or the contact is unsteady, or there's amazing movements in some gaits, but there's a weak gait, or just something kind of jogs them to the forefront. And I think part of the reason it didn't stand out as much to me in the beginning was there's just never an issue.
No, it was nearly faultless. All of her transitions or execution and all the gaits.
Just steady. And the contact in particular looked very steady and consistent.
Yeah. I love how technically too she rode each transition. It was really neat when the camera was on her during those transitions to see how she cued the horse and how willingly just stepped right into it.
It was kind of a surprise for me in the end. I've always loved Helguna's riding, but just that pair kind of rose to the top for me overall.
So my number 2 was somewhat because of bias, but also because there's a lot to note about this pair, is Hinrik Bragason, or Hinny, and True Frau Arbaka, which the really neat thing about this pair is, for one, they ended up placing 2nd overall in pace test. I think that pace test is the ultimate test of riding the horse in between the aids, because you need a horse that is extremely willing, but also extremely with you to achieve a high score in this test. Maybe you can break down a little bit of not necessarily the requirements, but what they're looking for to give a high score in each part of the pace test.
Absolutely. I was thinking that because a lot of people may not be at all familiar with pace tests.
It's not very common.
Especially in our US audience, because it's very rare that it's done here. It's really just Terrell started to do it more in the last couple of years, but there's very little history of that particular part of our sport here stateside. But it involves doing a transition. You have to cross a certain point, and I always like to think about it as deadline points. So there's a first point that you have to cross where you have to be in walk, tolter, trot, ideally tolter, trot. Then you have to cross the next line in a canter, or ideally even a gallop. So they want to see a smooth transition into a canter or gallop, and a powerful, expressive, good canter or gallop. And then the next line you have to cross in pace. You take the horse down and you're transitioning into pace. And then you pace 100 meters. And then you have to slow down, ideally to a walk. In the next stretch.
Before the next deadline.
Yes, before the next deadline. So those are the moments in the test. And you're given a score for your transition into pace. You're given a score for the quality of pace for the first 50 meters. You're given a score for pace or the quality of pace the next 50 meters. And then you're given a score for slowdown. And then you're also given a score for time. Anything below 8 seconds, you get a 10 for your time. So it's the only discipline we have where speed and scores for execution are both combined
in the overall score. Yeah. What I loved about this combination was, like I said, there is some biasness to it because Carrie and I both worked for them. What was really neat is she is also, the mare is out of Hinny's breeding. And I know that that is so special to be able to ride a horse from your breeding and to end up 2nd place overall. And she's also very young. She actually was one of the younger horses at the World Championships, I think at only 8 years old, maybe?
Yeah, she also did the 100-meter pace and the 250-meter pace.
Yes, and did well.
She showed up in multiple different pace classes throughout the duration of that World Championships week, and was harmonious and cooperative in every single one.
Yeah, so if you go back and watch that, there's a reason she got 2nd place overall. It's because the transitions were all just beautifully harmonious, and the forwardness in the pace, but also the lightness in the slowdown. It was just
gorgeous. It's like the epitome of a rideable horse, a truly rideable horse.
And that's the great part about that particular part of pace. The other pace classes, the slowdown can happen when it happens.
When it happens. Off the track, even at some points.
Keeping on the pace theme, my final notable mention for now, we might have to do a whole nother series
Episode
where we
on this.
talk more. And we should definitely get some of these folks on the podcast.
Absolutely.
My final favorite was Natalie Fisher and Ymir from Eskikov or Ageskov, a rider from Denmark. This rider and horse won the 100-meter pace, the P2, with a 7:10 as their time,
Wow.
which is holy smokes fast.
We can only imagine that in our dreams.
Like that, it's just wild.
I just can't even fathom.
And then they were also the winners of the P1 or 250-meter pace. With that race, her fastest time was 21.91 seconds, which is extremely fast for 250-meter pace. For those of you unfamiliar with the pace disciplines, a 100-meter pace is done with a flying start. They say that just means that the horse and rider combinations can run the horse into pace.
Yeah.
They can canter and then take the horse down into pace however they want. They just try to time their fastest pace in the 100-meter section in between the timers. That's it. And they have to keep the pace for that 100-meter section, obviously. In 250-meter pace, we actually become more like some of the other race disciplines in that the horses are loaded in start boxes. And then they usually canter out of the start boxes, and then they have to be in pace. So they don't have to canter, they can run them in pace directly out of the boxes, but they have to be in pace by the 50-meter mark and then pace the remaining 200 meters. Pace disciplines are really fun, and the 250 meters, of course, very exciting because the horses run side by side. In the 100-meter pace, they run one at a time. I think it's kind of incredible that she was a winner of both, which shows that the horse both has that shorter sprinting capacity and also that longer distance. The other really notable thing about her rides, especially the 100-meter sprint, was it appeared like she wasn't even asking the horse to go fast. More or less just the beautiful passenger. And I'm sure that's not the case. Like, I'm sure she was helping her horse in all sorts of ways. But it was very harmonious and very subtle.
Yeah.
And it was very clear that the horse was running of his own volition. It was very effortless.
Yeah.
I know how difficult that can be on crazy pace horses. That also takes a lot of conditioning and a lot of stamina and a lot of practice. That was just all pretty incredible for me to watch. I want to also say that we've talked a bit about other horse disciplines and sports. Here in the US, we see a lot of races, whether it be barrel racing or pole bending or thoroughbred races or standardbred races. And it's actually very rare that you see horses in races without the use of strong driving aids and without the use of a lot of auxiliary equipment to control and direct them during the race. In this case, I think this was once again, really good proof of concept of what's really possible there for our horses.
My third favorite horse and rider combo, and this is just, I think, because I've been a loyal fan watching them over the years, is Yamila and Topper, her Pinto stallion, I'm assuming is a stallion. I love watching them ride. Maybe it's because I've watched her for so long. I feel like I have been able to see their development in competition, and I can sort of see her process in subtle ways, working through riding him technically in V1 and T1. And the reason I just really admire them so much is because you can tell that he is a very technical ride. He has these massive movements in every gait, and while they are beautiful, they are incredibly difficult to balance, I'm sure.
We were stalled next to her in the Netherlands.
Yes, I remember.
So we have a bit
I
of
was
a
like,
bias
it
on
was a little
that.
bit of a fangirl moment because I had already watched them for a long time and we got to be right next to them.
And he went lame in the finals 2 years ago. In that sense, she really built him back up
Wow, yeah, no kidding.
for a pretty incredible comeback story at this World Championships. Those are our main comments. My main concern always when we make these statements is that we're going to piss someone off.
Yeah.
But if we did, please let us know. We're very open to comments because I think that sitting and watching events like this and having these conversations is what really progresses our sport. I like to see those conversations from two angles. The one angle is we always have to take a step back, reassess, and redirect. I also think that we need to allow ourselves moments of celebration.
Yes.
And noticing the things that we are doing well in our sport, things that in comparison to many, many other disciplines, we're actually leading the charge on horses that are happy and healthy and performing to their best abilities. I am personally overall proud of our community and this last World Championships. I am excited to see what we can continue to learn from and grow moving forward, hopefully in 2 years.
Yeah, and learn from these conversations. Absolutely.
Great.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Fifth Gate podcast. I know you've heard this on other channels, but it really is so important that you like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening through, or all of them for that matter. We would also love to hear from you on social media. Please send us ideas, suggestions, feedback, or let us know what you're enjoying right now so we can continue to make content you want to watch and hear. Thank you again for your support, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Fifth Gate podcast.